Great to have you with me on the Jack Rice Show. Go to jackrice.org for more information about me, about the program as well. Again, with Earth Day 2010 in Morocco, I'll be on my way to Rabat this next week. I'll have a chance to sit down with a lot of the key players and talk about why Morocco is working so hard on Earth Day, why they're trying to transform their country, and I would argue could create a blueprint that others around the world may be able to emulate. But as part of this, I'm trying to fill in the gaps to give a better understanding of Morocco, of North Africa, and I even think more broadly in terms of the Muslim world, because there are so much misunderstanding between the U.S. and parts of the Muslim world. That's why I'm very pleased to have with me Professor Yasmine Hasnaoui, again from the Department of Asian Languages and Civilizations from Amherst College. Professor, thank you very much for joining the program.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Jack.
Well, in particular, what I want to talk about are the rights of women, because I've seen this misunderstanding sort of perpetrated again and again and again, especially after 9/11 when it comes to women and rights and Islam. And to me, I think looking at Morocco is an interesting microcosm when it comes to one example, but not necessarily that it applies to all of them. Can you talk to me about that?
Sure. First of all, let me just highlight that women's rights in Morocco start right away, like the independence. But, I mean, it improved a lot thanks to the King Mohammed VI when he came to the throne. He played like a key role in championing reform of the Mudawana, or we call it the family code. So thanks to this code, Moroccan women have achieved the most significant gains, I would say, namely at workplace, justice, government, and many other levels. Though the challenges, I mean, I can say that there are a lot of challenges, but still, Moroccan rights in Morocco have improved like at such an unprecedented way. For instance, the girl has the right to choose her husband. The age of marriage now is 18 and not under. And now, recently, Morocco is recently working on implementing a law that protects women against domestic violence. Okay, they have the right to travel freely, both domestically and internationally. And also, they've gained many seats in we have 35 women MPs and 7 women ministers and women leading key role position within the government. So I think that Morocco has improved a lot on this human right in women's rights.
Would we think about that, and if we can sort of compare that with other parts of the Middle East?
Sure.
I mean, I think back to time that I've spent in Syria, or when I was in Iraq, or when I was in Pakistan or Afghanistan and other places. I mean, there's a huge difference. Is what's held back, and I see this from sort of a Western perspective, so please bear with me, that it seems that the rights of women to be comparable to men has been held back. Is it the Quran that does that, or a misunderstanding of the Quran, or what?
Well, actually, people need to understand this. Women's rights in each country of the Middle East are different. Okay? We cannot compare women's rights in Bahrain and women's rights in Qatar or Lebanon or Saudi Arabia. So each country has got its own, ways of working on women's rights. For instance, in Kuwait, you can find women MPs. However, in Saudi Arabia, women are still struggling in getting their rights in justice, work, freedom of traveling, etc. In Jordan, the Queen Rania is working wholeheartedly in promoting education of girls, and Jordanian women also work on legal equality on issues such as their freedom of movement, healthcare, education, political participation, and employment. So each country of the Middle East is different, and they are all, I would say, working on. They're struggling, when working on improving the women's rights. But as you said, the Sharia as well plays a role in each country. Okay, taking for instance the example of Morocco, women have struggled in actually emphasizing not on the Sharia itself that says literally speaking what happens in the Quran, etc., but rather on the goals of Sharia. Okay, and what I mean by the goals of Sharia is the concept that involves the contextualization of these rules in changing historical circumstances. So each country country is different, and each country is working on its women's rights issues.
Well, Professor Yasmine Hasnaoui is my guest, again, from the Department of Asian Languages and Civilizations at Amherst College. You mentioned Mohammed VI, the King of Morocco,
yes.
and about what they're trying to accomplish here. Again, he's a younger man. I mean, he's a younger king, a new generation.
Yes.
Is that part of this? It's not the older generation that may be looking back, but a younger generation looking forward? I don't want to be too simplistic about this, but is that part of this?
Well, actually, all the kings, Hassan, the king's grandfather is not the same as his late son, Hassan II, and Hassan II is not like Muhammad VI. So each generation is, of our related kings is different. But now it's a new generation. It's like we are in a world of globalization. Morocco is opening to many countries. And there should be that change. There should be that modernization. And also, like, the king has said it many times that this is a new century, and women should be part of the development of Morocco, because if we have this patriarchal society, Morocco will never advance. So it's a matter of globalization. It's a matter of the king is very open-minded, and as the example, like his wife Lalla Salma is taking part in many associations, and she is leading. She's been to the UN. She's been in different places, and she's with her husband. We can see her all the time working on women's rights, etc. So it's a totally different era. We are in a modern world, and we have to advance. And for a country to advance, women should have their rights.
I'm curious.
And that's what happened in Morocco.
Well, I'm curious about another aspect of this, and I appreciate this because, again, this is very sort of open-ended, and I'm trying to sort of fill in the gaps in my own mind, too. With colonization throughout Africa, North Africa, too, there's been a lot of influence coming in from Europe, and I'm thinking about the French and some of the oversight from, 50, 60-plus years ago. Did that play a role for women versus what I've seen in other parts of the world, especially in Morocco?
What is that? I'm sorry.
Well, did the French sort of close connection with France over so many years, what kind of influence did that play?
Of course. Morocco, first of all, Morocco was colonized by France, etc. And after colonization, Morocco gained has that long-standing friendship with France, and also we are close to France, so we are open to France. And the penal code is derived from, I would say, it has some examples from the penal code of France. So I would say that women are open-minded, and they have their legal right as the ones in France. So that relationship plays a role in women's rights in Morocco.
I'm a lawyer as well, and again, on as a prosecutor for some time and as a criminal defense attorney, I kind of look at it from the inside out. I remember seeing a documentary that talked about the role of women in the court system, and which is somewhat unique. It's not something you see, and you already said that it's country to country, it's not region to region. Can you talk a bit about that? How do women, and how does that role play? Is there something about that that's unique as well?
Well, certainly yes. You're talking about the courts in Morocco?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now with the family code, we have women have their rights, and there is a tribunal solely for women that help women getting their rights. Is that what you mean? Absolutely. Yes, so that's actually what happens, and actually thanks to this family code that you have tribunal of women that try to give women their rights, but also as well, not all women know about this right. Not all women know about this family code, saying due to this, I would say, this high rate of illiteracy, in the rural areas of Morocco, unfortunately. So that's why these tribunals and these government and the NGOs need to join their efforts in order to inform these women and to fight this illiteracy. Has that been a part of this too? Again, that's right.
That's an interesting angle that we haven't even discussed, is this question of literacy in general. But I think frequently when you talk about rights or the role that women have, if they're not literate, frequently, even if you say you have these rights, if you're unaware of them, it's not going to do you any good at all. Has there been an effort inside of Morocco in general to increase literacy amongst all of the populace, but in particular amongst women?
Yeah, well, actually, there are many human rights NGOs that work on they all join. There are many political parties along with the government and human rights NGOs that they try to join their efforts to reach all segments of the female population and educate them about their civil rights, especially in the rural areas, as well as providing them with legal assistance to defend those rights when necessary. Because I would say there are more than 50% of illiteracy, in women in rural areas, and there should be efforts. There are efforts, but there should be continuous efforts in informing these women. For instance, in some areas, the rural areas of Morocco, women still know that divorce is still in the hand of the husband. No, divorce is in the hands of the judge now, thanks to this reform and thanks to that family code. But these women need to be informed. These women need to have some literacy programs, and they need to be fully enrolled in education.
Are you optimistic that we're going to continue to see this expansion of the rights of women?
I am. I can feel it from myself. Like, I've been invited to give talks, and I've been in Morocco for many years. I grew up in Morocco, and this is, I would say, my 7th month in the United States. And I've been working with those NGOs, and I can tell that it's very optimistic. And all this is thanks to to Mohammed VI, the king, who endorses the NGOs. Women bring him, whatever law about women's rights, and he endorses it. And you could see it. You could see it from myself, from my mother who travels all over the world. She's a professor, and my dad it's I can see it, but still there are efforts that need to be done, and no problem is going to be solved with the touch of magic wands. It needs time, but it's on its surest way.
Well, Professor, I sure appreciate your expertise and your time. Obviously, as I'm preparing to go to Rabat and throughout and across Morocco in about a week or so, I'm getting very excited about it. But beyond that, I think just giving me that much more information and our listeners that much more information is always helpful. Thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Jack. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
A real pleasure. Professor Yasmine Hasnaoui from the Department of Asian Languages and Civilizations at Amherst College, as we continue to look at Morocco. Again, with 2010 and Earth Day 2010 in Morocco this year, the only African, the only Muslim country to ever sponsor it. I think the importance of looking at the world is something we do right here on the program, is something I've always tried to want to focus in on anyway. Look, we've all seen this. You and I all have, haven't we? Where you look at what the media does and they want to simplify everything. They want to just give you some sort of glib 120-second answer to something terribly complex, which we all know is actually false, or gives you a false sense of what the real answer is. I've never wanted to try to do that. I've always tried to dig in a bit deeper to understand what it means, and then maybe go on to a broader region so you have more understanding. We will continue to do that. Stay with the program. Coming up next, we're going to turn to a correspondent from the Talk Radio, Talk Media News Service with the National Security Summit taking place right here in Washington, D.C. It will go on for some 2 days with 47 leaders from around the world. We will follow and take a closer look at that. Stay with me. You're listening to The Jack Rice Show.